Carson Beck withdrew from the NFL draft so that he could transfer to the University of Miami and be with his girlfriend. What? The only reason why Carson Beck would go to the University of Miami is because he's dating one of the Havender twins. I don't know if it's Haley or Hannah or whichever one, but one of the twins he's dating, and they currently are finishing their senior season at the University of Miami, and that's why Carson Beck decided to go to the University of Miami. There were so many other options from a football standpoint that would have been better for him and actually help him propel his draft stock for next year, but he's making all of his decisions based off of his girlfriend. Like, what? She's a social media influencer, so if he doesn't go to the NFL, she's probably not going to want to date him anyways. She'll probably be dating some guy who actually did go to the league. Carson Beck should have just focused on himself, made the right decision, and gone to a school that's going to let him air it out, show what his talents actually are. But he also should have stayed in a division that's actually competitive, like the Big Ten or SEC. Carson Beck going to the ACC and balling out is not going to help his draft stock. He's playing against worse competition. We've seen him against Georgia, and the only question that we'll have is, I wonder what he's going to be able to accomplish against SEC guys, right? And so him going to Georgia was a pure selfish decision to be close to his girlfriend. So I hope it works out for their relationship because it's probably going to cost him his NFL career or at least a few rounds in the draft. Quinn Ewers' last game for Texas is going to be against his future team, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I put out a video recently letting you guys know that Quinn Ewers has been committed to Ohio State at this point for over 6 weeks. He's been locked in to go to the Buckeyes. I know that there's been all kind of numbers like 3 million, 6 million, 4 million about what he's getting paid to go to Ohio State. I don't know what he's getting paid. I do know that Quinn Ewers will be an Ohio State Buckeye. So this game is like the ultimate peak for him because not only does he get to play against Ohio State this year and possibly go to the national championship, but after this year, he's going to be playing with all of those same guys as teammates. So this is the ultimate storyline for Quinn Ewers, and I'm sure he's looking up to this one, and hopefully going to play a good game tonight against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Marcus Freeman is going to be the first African American coach to coach a national championship college football game. And I'm not even sure that he's happy about that. When they asked him, "Hey Marcus, how do you feel about being the first black coach to coach in a national championship game?" His response was, "Well, my mom's Asian, so I'm going to be the first Asian coach too." The only reason that I mention this is that he didn't say anything about being a black coach. And it's like, is that part of the Notre Dame image and what he wants to put on as a pretty face for Notre Dame? Or does Marcus Freeman not identify as an African American head coach? What, like, he went to Ohio State. He was an Ohio State football player. I wonder when that changed for him. When did Marcus Freeman stop being a black head football coach? Kyle McCord declared for the NFL draft for what reason? Kyle McCord is not an NFL quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. And if an NFL team wanted someone or something to throw footballs in the middle of DB's chest, they would just go to the jugs machine. Kyle McCord has no future in the NFL, especially not this year. So him going to the NFL draft is blasphemous. Whatever scout told him that like, hey, you're moving up the draft boards or you're going to be in a good spot, I don't know how. I don't know how that can be the case. Anybody who watched Syracuse play this year could tell you the quarterback's not ready. Uh, right now specifically, but he might not ever be ready for the NFL. Right? And so like the Kyle McCord has swag internet meme is cool, but he's not an NFL quarterback at this point in time. He needs to withdraw from the draft and see how much money he can get in the transfer portal somewhere. Ohio State fans were calling for Ryan Day's job, and now they have an opportunity to go to the national championship. So I guess my question is how big is the Michigan game for Ohio State? If Ohio State loses to Michigan next year or the year after and we go back to the national championship, is that a win for us? How do we actually see that game? If we win a national championship, does that cement Ryan Day's legacy at Ohio State? Will Ryan Day be guaranteed to stay at Ohio State for 5, 10 years if he wins a national championship this year? Or is his legacy and his honestly job security still dependent on him beating Michigan? Because now, every year that he's been the head coach, we have lost to the Michigan Wolverines. So, what is our line? As Ohio State fans, where do we draw the line in the sand that says, hey, we have to get rid of this guy, he's not the culture, or we're going to keep him and he's going to be a statue somewhere in Columbus at one day? The only thing worse than the wildfires in Los Angeles is the wildfire in Arkansas. Fayetteville, Arkansas is in the middle of a John Calipari wildfire. Their team can't win. Their team isn't good. They're not coming together. And then the coach goes to the presser and says ridiculous things. I legitimately think that John Calipari is losing his mental. The stuff that he says in press conferences is off the wall and it doesn't make sense, but he's delivering it with such confidence that it sounds like it makes sense. After they lost a week ago, he said, "Man, I knew that I told the guys no shoot around. So when they came on the court, they were just like fresh." It's like, what head coach sends their ball club out there without a shoot around? What would be the point of that? If you have time to shoot around, let the guys get shots up, or at least give them the opportunity. But you have to listen to his press conferences and his interviews, and you have to realize that his marbles aren't all there anymore. The stuff that he says is off the wall. It doesn't make sense. And it's like he just delivers it with such confidence that people buy into it. Arkansas hiring John Calipari as their basketball coach might go down as one of the worst decisions in history for them. By the time John Calipari got to Arkansas, he was completely washed. FS1 announced earlier this year that they were canceling Skip Bayless's show Undisputed. How long have they known about this lawsuit? How long has FS1 known what Skip Bayless was doing to other coworkers? And how long have they known about the entire Joy Taylor scandal? Because they announced that they were canceling FS1, and FS1 is a well watched show. Skip Bayless is a figure that everybody knows of, but out of the blue, his show's just going to get canceled. I think that FS1 has known about this lawsuit for a long time, and I think that Skip Bayless has some crazy stuff that's going to come out in the midst of this lawsuit because they wouldn't just get rid of his show for no reason. The ratings were there for Undisputed, so the stuff that's actually in this lawsuit or the stuff that Skip Bayless is guilty of is going to be insane. And I'm going to be keeping eyes on it every step along the way. Tyron Lacey, LSU wide receiver, is now being searched for on felony charges for a hit and run homicide of an elderly man. This can't get any worse. This is like eerily similar of the Henry Ruggs situation. He was speeding, it was a hit and run. The guy ended up dying. And now this young man's life and his career is probably over with. Tyron Lacey's time on a football field, at least as far as we know it, is done for. He's not going to be out at spring practice, spring camp, or doing any of that stuff next year. He's going to be literally fighting inside of a courtroom for his life. And by the time he's able to see the light of day, he's not going to be in shape for football, and he's not going to be the type of character that NFL teams are looking for. So this is really sad. Like this is the kind of thing that you hate to see with young men in college football because he was a star. Kyron Lacey was a star. Every time LSU played this year, he was making a highlight. He was on the news, and it was all number two LSU scores a touchdown. So it's unfortunate to see now him in this position where we probably saw Kyron Lacey play his last college football game ever. Kentucky fans, when do we pull the plug? I'm literally asking, I'm legitimately asking you, when do we pull the plug on Mark Pope? I know it's fair to give him a year. If the Kentucky team next year is not good or they're not tough, when do we pull the plug? I don't think that we should give him a third year. I think that he's done some things that are good, but there's also indicators of our team that like these guys aren't tough. These guys aren't playing great basketball. And like you can see it now, we're not going to win more than 2 games in the NCAA tournament. There's just no way. We're not consistent enough. And when we lose games, it's because we're going out there and the other team just looks way better than us. The other team looks like they have 10 times good as guys of us on the court. And like that's an issue. That's something fundamentally wrong with this team where it's like their guys aren't more talented than us. Their guys aren't more experienced than us. How are they tougher than us? What are they practicing that we're not practicing? What is their culture that we don't have? What are we not doing? What is it as a Kentucky basketball team that we are not doing? And right now that's the big question. There's no consistency with this team, and it would be unfair to us as Kentucky fans to keep latching on and saying, "Oh, our team's going to be good. Our team's going to be good. Our team's going to be good." It's like, no, we're in SEC basketball play now. By far the most difficult conference to play basketball in college basketball this year. And we're probably at our lowest point as a team. We're at a point as a team now to where we don't really know what our DNA is. We don't know who our best guy is. We still don't have a scorer. We don't have a guy that we're going to get the ball to when we need a bucket. Nobody has identified themselves to be the big dog or the leader on this team, or a guy who can take over the game and be a true Kentucky Wildcat. It's like we have 12 role players on our ball club. So I'm asking you, Kentucky fans, when do we get rid of Mark Pope? What would it take for us to get rid of Mark Pope, go back out on the searching hire, and look for the guys that we wanted before, which is Dan Hurley, Billy Donovan, Rick Pitino, and Nate Oates? If one of those four coaches came available, do we get rid of Mark Pope? If Dan Hurley was able to come to the Kentucky Wildcats and coach here, I would get rid of Mark Pope tomorrow because Mark Pope doesn't have what we need as a Kentucky fan base. This team is going to lose all year long. The team next year might lose all year long, depending who we get. We have our two biggest recruits for next year are guys who are from Kentucky. That's not good. Kentucky basketball is not traditionally great. And if we can only recruit in our home state, we are going to be in trouble. So I'm waving the white flag. Kentucky fans, I'm waving the white flag. We need to get rid of Mark Pope. Not this year. Maybe not next year. But Mark Pope won't make it 3 seasons with the Kentucky Wildcats. He's a good coach. He's a good guy, but he's not meant to coach on this level. And so he's going to get a lot of opportunities other places. Um, but this stage isn't meant for Mark Pope. Kentucky fans, we need to make a push for Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley still needs to be the Kentucky basketball coach. He has the winning tenure, he has the coaching desire, and he has the ability to make Kentucky basketball what they've always been. And now that UConn's on a down year, this would be our opportunity to go after Dan Hurley. We could convince him, hey, you should come to Kentucky. UConn's down. You can come to Kentucky and restart what you were already doing, but you can build it back quicker and we can be great forever faster. Dan Hurley would be in on that. Kentucky fans, we would be in on that. We love Mark Pope, but Mark Pope could be an assistant coach for us. Just to be honest, there's nothing about Mark Pope's resume that tells us that he was even supposed to be Kentucky's basketball coach. And now that he's underperforming, let's call him out on it. Mark Pope's not supposed to be in this position, and that's our fault. So when do we fix it? How long will it take us to fix it? Because the longer that we wait, the more of our fault that is. Golden State Warriors are wasting stuff. The Golden State Warriors are wasting Steph Curry. We need to make a move now. There's no reason to wait. Kuminga is not going to become a star between now and the deadline. So we have to get him out of here. We have to trade every piece on the team that we currently have for a big and then another difference maker or a star. But the team that we have now isn't cutting it. They're not going to cut it. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was something in the locker room, but this is not the same team that started out the year 7-0, 8-0, whatever it was. Golden State needs help. They need to make a move. It doesn't have to be for a star, but it has to be for at least two good pieces.